The excavator arrived first, like a yellow metal dinosaur crawling through our pristine corporate parking lot at 6:47 a.m. Then came the dump trucks, 17 of them, each one groaning under the weight of 40 tons of premium decorative river stone. Pink granite. Imported from Vermont. The kind you'd use in a Zen garden or maybe a luxury spa courtyard, not as foundational material for a multi-million-dollar aerospace manufacturing facility. Our $70 million client, Meridian Aerospace, stood at the conference room window watching their future production floor get buried under what looked like a candy-colored avalanche. The CFO, sharp suit, sharper expression, turned to our team and asked very slowly, "Is this some kind of performance art?" Nobody laughed. Not Victoria from legal. Not Harrison from project management. And certainly not me, Martha, the woman who just watched 15 years of reputation management disappear under a mountain of decorative landscaping material. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story doesn't start with pink gravel. It starts 3 weeks earlier, in a conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and broken dreams, where I just closed the biggest infrastructure deal in our company's history. $70 million. 70, with enough zeros to make a mortgage broker weep. I'd spent 8 months courting Meridian Aerospace, learning the intricate dance of government contracts, compliance regulations, and the very specific needs of companies that build things designed to leave Earth's atmosphere. The contract signing should have been a celebration. Champagne, maybe a plaque, at least a company-wide email with my name in bold letters. What I got instead was a lukewarm handshake from Victoria, our department head, and a brief mention in the quarterly newsletter buried between the new vending machine announcement and the updated parking policy. "Great team effort," Victoria announced during our Monday all-hands, her voice carrying all the enthusiasm of someone reading a grocery list. "This Meridian deal really shows what we can accomplish when everyone pulls together." Everyone. As if the entire building had collectively manifested a $70 million aerospace contract through group meditation and positive thinking. That afternoon, Victoria called me into her office, the one with the motivational posters that felt more like threats than inspiration. "Martha," she said, settling behind her desk like a judge preparing to deliver a sentence, "I have some exciting news." The word exciting in corporate speak usually translates to your life is about to get complicated in ways you haven't imagined yet. "We're bringing in some fresh blood to help manage our growing portfolio," she continued, her smile stretched thin as plastic wrap. "Someone with innovative ideas and a different perspective on project management." That's when she introduced me to Cameron. 26 years old, MBA from somewhere expensive, and the kind of confidence that comes from never having been truly spectacularly wrong about anything important. He walked into Victoria's office like he was auditioning for a cologne commercial, all firm handshakes and eye contact that lasted exactly 2.3 seconds too long. "Cameron will be joining us as co-director of strategic initiatives," Victoria beamed. "I thought it would be valuable for him to shadow our most experienced project manager." She looked directly at me when she said shadow, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. 15 years of building relationships, understanding the intricate web of regulations and client needs, and now I was supposed to be a tutorial level for someone who probably thought infrastructure meant having good Wi-Fi. Cameron extended his hand toward me with a grin that belonged in a toothpaste ad. "You must be my training guy," he said. "Victoria's told me so much about your traditional approach to client management." Training guy. Not mentor. Not senior colleague. Not the woman who just landed the biggest deal in company history. Training guy. I shook his hand and smiled back, because some battles aren't won with immediate reactions. Some require planning, patience, and the careful documentation of exactly how deep someone is willing to dig their own grave. The shadowing began immediately. Cameron didn't just want to observe my process, he wanted to optimize it. Day 1, he suggested we streamline the client communication pipeline by using a project management app he discovered. Day 2, he questioned why I still use spreadsheets when there are so many cloud-based solutions that offer real-time collaboration. By day 3, he was interrupting client calls to suggest more agile methodologies and asking why we couldn't leverage automation to reduce human error in the approval process. Victoria loved it. Every interruption, every buzzword-heavy suggestion, every time Cameron spoke over me in meetings, she nodded like she was watching a TED Talk about the future of business. Meanwhile, my carefully cultivated relationships with clients started showing strain as Cameron pushed for changes to processes that had taken years to perfect. The Meridian project became his particular obsession. During our weekly check-ins, he'd lean back in his chair, my chair actually, since he'd somehow migrated to sitting at my desk during our meetings, and pontificate about revolutionary approaches to large-scale project delivery. The thing about these legacy clients, he'd say, gesturing vaguely toward the Meridian files, is they're stuck in old paradigms. They need someone to show them what modern project management looks like. Legacy clients. As if Meridian Aerospace, a company that had been successfully launching satellites since Cameron was learning to tie his shoes, was somehow trapped in the Stone Age because they preferred detailed documentation and proven processes over whatever management philosophy Cameron had absorbed from LinkedIn articles. But the real breaking point came during our third week. We were reviewing the preliminary site preparation requirements for Meridian's new facility, a complex process involving soil analysis, environmental impact assessments, and the careful coordination of multiple subcontractors. I'd spent weeks building relationships with the right suppliers, vetting their credentials, and ensuring every aspect of the preparation work met Meridian's exacting standards. Cameron skimmed through my notes like he was reading a restaurant menu. "This seems overly complicated," he announced. "Why are we micromanaging every supplier relationship? Can't we just find one vendor to handle all the site prep materials and streamline the whole process?" "Because," I explained, keeping my voice level, "different aspects of site preparation require different specialists. The soil remediation team, the foundation contractors, and the landscaping material suppliers all have different expertise and certification requirements." He waved his hand dismissively. "That's old-school thinking. What we need is a single point of contact who can handle everything. Someone who can pivot quickly and adapt to changing requirements." Old-school thinking. From someone who thought pivot was a strategy rather than what you do when your original plan was fundamentally flawed. That evening, I opened a new folder on my desktop. I titled it Cameron Documentation, and began what would become the most therapeutic filing system of my career. Victoria made the announcement on a Friday, because apparently even corporate backstabbing follows a schedule. "I'm excited to announce that Cameron will be taking the lead on the Meridian site preparation phase," she declared during our team meeting. "This will give him an opportunity to demonstrate his innovative approach to vendor management." Taking the lead. On the project I'd spent 8 months developing, using relationships I'd built over 15 years in the industry. Cameron nodded solemnly, like he was accepting a Nobel Prize rather than being handed control of someone else's work. "I'm really looking forward to bringing some fresh energy to this project," he said. "I think Martha's groundwork has been solid, but there's definitely room for some creative disruption." Creative disruption. I made a mental note to add that phrase to my growing collection of Cameronisms. After the meeting, he pulled me aside with that same toothpaste commercial smile. "Don't worry, training guy," he said, patting my shoulder like I was a golden retriever who'd successfully fetched a newspaper. "I'll make sure to keep you in the loop on any major decisions." Keep me in the loop. On my own project. How generous. But I smiled back and said, "I'm confident you'll handle everything perfectly." Because the most dangerous thing you can do to someone who's never failed is give them exactly what they think they want. That weekend, I reviewed every supplier contact, every specification document, every regulatory requirement for the Meridian site preparation. I organized everything into a comprehensive digital folder, complete with vendor certifications, material specifications, delivery schedules, and detailed notes about the unique requirements for aerospace facility construction. Then I did something I'd never done before in 15 years of project management. I removed all the safety nets. No more follow-up calls to vendors to confirm orders. No more double-checking specifications against regulatory requirements. No more gentle reminders about delivery schedules or quality control measures. Cameron wanted to innovate? He could innovate without my old-school interference. Monday morning, I handed him a pristine folder containing every piece of documentation he'd need to manage the site preparation phase. Vendor contacts, material specifications, regulatory guidelines, everything organized with a kind of meticulous attention to detail that comes from 15 years of making sure nothing falls through the cracks. "This is incredible," Cameron said, flipping through the documents. "You really went old school with the documentation, huh? Very thorough." "I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed," I replied. "All the vendor relationships are established, the specifications are clearly outlined, and the approval processes are documented step by step." He nodded, already distracted by his phone. "Perfect. I'll probably streamline a lot of this, but it's a good foundation to work from. Streamline. My 15 years of experience, reduced to a foundation that needed optimization by someone who thought expertise was just inefficient tradition. Cameron's streamlined approach began immediately. Instead of working with our established network of specialized suppliers, he decided to find a single vendor who could handle all aspects of site preparation. One-stop shopping, he explained during a team update. Much more efficient than managing multiple relationships. He found Pinnacle Site Solutions through what he proudly described as advanced LinkedIn research techniques. Their website was sleek, full of buzzwords about comprehensive site solutions and turnkey preparation services. They promised to handle everything from soil analysis to final landscaping with cutting-edge project management methodologies. I could have mentioned that Pinnacle had been in business for exactly 18 months. I could have noted that their portfolio consisted mainly of residential developments and small commercial projects. I could have pointed out that aerospace facility preparation requires specialized knowledge of federal regulations, environmental compliance, and the kind of precision that comes from years of experience with similar projects. Instead, I said, they seem very enthusiastic about innovation. Cameron beamed. Exactly. That's the kind of forward-thinking partner we need. The first red flag should have been when Pinnacle's project manager, Dylan, joined our planning call wearing a baseball cap and referring to the Meridian facility as that rocket ship place. The second red flag was when he asked if we needed the site preparation to be space grade, or if regular construction quality would be sufficient. Cameron laughed it off. Dylan brings a refreshing lack of pretension to the process, he told me afterward. Sometimes industry expertise can become a barrier to creative solutions. Industry expertise as a barrier. I added that to my Cameron documentation file, right next to the screenshot of his email approving Pinnacle's proposal without reviewing their certifications or insurance documentation. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in watching someone create problems they didn't know existed. Cameron bypassed our standard vendor verification process because it was too bureaucratic. He approved material specifications without cross-referencing them against Meridian's requirements because the documents were unnecessarily complex. He fast-tracked the timeline because he wanted to demonstrate proactive project delivery. Meanwhile, I maintained perfect documentation of every decision, every shortcut, every moment when Cameron chose efficiency over expertise. Email threads, meeting notes, approval timestamps, all of it carefully filed and backed up in multiple locations. Victoria was thrilled with Cameron's decisive leadership style. During our weekly updates, she praised his ability to cut through red tape and focus on results. When I occasionally asked questions about specific decisions, she'd wave them off with comments about letting fresh perspectives flourish. The irony was almost beautiful. They wanted innovation so badly that they were actively discouraging the kind of careful analysis that might have revealed how spectacularly everything was about to go wrong. The call came on a Tuesday morning at 7:23 a.m. Dylan from Pinnacle, his voice carrying the kind of panic that suggests someone has just realized they're in way over their head. "Hey Martha, quick question," he said, though we both knew this wasn't going to be quick or simple. "So we started the excavation work yesterday, and we're running into some complications with the material delivery." Complications. In construction, that word covers everything from minor delays to catastrophic failures of planning and foresight. What kind of complications? I asked, though I suspected I already knew. Well, it turns out the foundation prep requires a specific type of aggregate that we may have substituted with something more cost-effective. Cost-effective. The construction industry's favorite euphemism for cheap and completely inappropriate. What exactly did you substitute? A pause that lasted long enough for me to refill my coffee cup. Decorative river rock. Pink granite. Really high-quality stuff. We got a great deal on it from a landscaping supplier in Vermont. I closed my eyes and counted to 5. Dylan, you're building a foundation for an aerospace manufacturing facility, not a Zen garden. Right, but the specs just called for aggregate material for foundation support, and technically, rock is rock, you know? No. Rock is not rock. Decorative riverstone is designed to look pretty in suburban driveways, not support the weight of precision manufacturing equipment worth more than most people's houses. But explaining the difference between aesthetic landscaping materials and structural foundation aggregate would require time, patience, and a client who hadn't already committed to 17 truckloads of pink granite. How much decorative rock are we talking about? I asked. About 680 tons? But like I said, really high-quality stuff. Expensive. 680 tons of decorative landscaping material, delivered to the site of what was supposed to become one of the most advanced aerospace manufacturing facilities on the East Coast. I thanked Dylan for the call, hung up, and immediately called Cameron. Martha. His voice carried the forced enthusiasm of someone who definitely knew something was wrong but was hoping enthusiasm could somehow fix it. Dylan mentioned there might be a small hiccup with the material delivery. Nothing we can't handle. Cameron, they delivered decorative rocks instead of structural aggregate. Right, but Dylan explained that it's actually higher quality material than what was originally specified. Sometimes these happy accidents work out better than the original plan. Happy accidents. As if the fundamental misunderstanding of construction materials was somehow a serendipitous discovery rather than a catastrophic failure of basic project management. The Meridian team is touring the site this morning, I said. They're expecting to see foundation preparation for a manufacturing facility, not a decorative garden installation. A pause. Then, can't we just explain the situation? Show them that we're thinking outside the box. Thinking outside the box. Cameron's solution to delivering the wrong materials was to rebrand incompetence as innovation. The site tour was scheduled for 9 a.m. At 8:45, I parked at the edge of the construction area and watched 17 dump trucks systematically convert a precision manufacturing site into what looked like the world's most expensive rock garden. The pink granite caught the morning sunlight like scattered gems, creating a landscape that was simultaneously beautiful and completely, utterly wrong for its intended purpose. Meridian's team arrived in 2 black SUVs, their expressions shifting from professional interest to visible confusion as they surveyed the scene. The CFO, the one who would later ask about performance art, stood at the edge of the site for a full minute without speaking. Cameron arrived fashionably late, his confidence intact despite the pastel apocalypse surrounding us. He approached the Meridian team with his trademark smile and launched into what I can only describe as the most creative attempt at damage control I've ever witnessed. What you're seeing here, he announced, gesturing broadly at the pink granite landscape, is our innovative approach to foundation preparation. Instead of traditional aggregate, we've sourced premium decorative stone that will provide superior drainage characteristics while maintaining aesthetic appeal. The Meridian project manager, a woman named Patricia who'd been building aerospace facilities since before Cameron was born, tilted her head slightly. Are you suggesting that we build our precision manufacturing equipment on a foundation of landscaping rocks? I prefer to think of it as elevated material selection, Cameron replied. Sometimes the best solutions come from challenging conventional assumptions about construction materials. Patricia looked at the CFO. The CFO looked at the site. The site looked like a very expensive mistake had been given physical form and painted pink. We'll be in touch, Patricia said finally. Then they got back in their SUVs and drove away, leaving Cameron standing in the middle of 680 tons of decorative stone, still trying to spin disaster into innovation. The first call came 90 minutes after the Meridian team left the site. Victoria's voice carried the kind of barely controlled panic that suggests someone has just realized their career might be built on a foundation as unstable as decorative river rock. Martha, I need you in conference room B immediately. Bring any documentation you have regarding the Meridian site preparation decisions. Conference room B was where they held the serious conversations, the ones about budget overruns, contract violations, and the kind of mistakes that make CFOs consider early retirement. I arrived with my laptop and a folder that had grown substantially over the past month. Victoria sat at the head of the table, flanked by Harrison from legal and someone from corporate I didn't recognize but who looked expensive and unhappy. Cameron was noticeably absent. Walk me through the vendor selection process for site preparation materials, Victoria said without preamble. I opened my laptop and projected the first document onto the conference room screen. Cameron chose to consolidate all site preparation services with Pinnacle Site Solutions, bypassing our standard multi-vendor approach. Based on your recommendation? The expensive-looking stranger asked. No, I replied, clicking to the next document. I provided Cameron with our established vendor network and detailed specifications for each phase of site preparation. He decided to streamline the process by finding a single contractor. The email chain appeared on screen, time-stamped and perfectly preserved. Cameron's messages were a masterclass in confident incompetence, found a great one-stop solution that will eliminate the complexity of managing multiple vendor relationships. Did you review Pinnacle's qualifications? Harrison asked. I wasn't asked to, I said, clicking through to Cameron's approval emails. Cameron wanted to take the lead on vendor management as part of his innovative approach to project delivery. More emails. Cameron praising Pinnacle's fresh perspective on site preparation and his excitement about bringing cutting-edge solutions to a traditional industry. His approval of their material substitutions, delivered with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for discovering a new coffee shop. Victoria rubbed her temples like she was trying to massage away a migraine that had taken human form and enrolled in business school. Where is Cameron now? He's meeting with Pinnacle to discuss remediation options, I said. Though discuss remediation options was corporate speak for panic about how to fix an unfixable situation. The expensive stranger leaned forward. What would it cost to remove the decorative stone and install appropriate foundation materials? I had already run those numbers, because 15 years of project management teaches you to calculate disaster recovery costs before the disaster is officially acknowledged. Removal, disposal, and proper material installation would run approximately $340,000, plus a 6-week delay in the construction timeline. Silence filled the room like water flooding a sinking ship. And if we don't remediate? Victoria asked, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer. Meridian terminates the contract for failure to meet construction specifications. We forfeit the advance payment and face potential legal action for breach of contract. Total exposure, approximately $8.2 million. More silence. The kind that usually precedes either resignations or the discovery of scapegoats. Harrison cleared his throat. Martha, did you at any point advise Cameron about the risks of material substitution? I had been waiting for this question for 3 weeks. I clicked to a new folder on my desktop, one labeled Advisory Communications, and projected another email thread. Martha Chun to Cameron Wright, recommend reviewing material specifications against Meridian's engineering requirements before finalizing orders. Cameron Wright to Martha Chun, thanks for the input, but I want to trust our vendor partners to make appropriate material choices. Sometimes too much oversight can stifle innovation. Martha Chun to Cameron Wright, foundation aggregate requirements are specifically detailed in Section 7.3 of the Meridian Technical Specifications. Cameron Wright to Martha Chun, I appreciate your attention to detail, but I'd prefer to focus on the big picture rather than getting bogged down in technical minutiae. Technical minutiae, also known as the specifications that prevent aerospace facilities from being built on decorative landscaping materials. I closed the laptop and looked around the room. I have approximately 47 similar exchanges documented over the past 3 weeks. Victoria stared at me like I had just revealed that I could predict the future, or at least the past with uncomfortable accuracy. You documented everything? I document all project communications, I said. It's standard practice for managing complex client relationships. What I didn't say was that I had started documenting with particular care the moment Cameron called me his training guy. Some instincts are honed by years of watching talented people get blamed for other people's innovations. The expensive stranger stood up. We'll need copies of all documentation for legal review. And Martha. He paused at the door. Good work on the documentation. Very thorough. After they left, I sat alone in conference room B, looking out at the parking lot where Cameron's car was noticeably absent. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. Cameron's desk is being cleared by facilities. His access card has been deactivated. I replied, noted. Please reschedule the Meridian recovery meeting for tomorrow morning. Some people get fired with drama, shouting, and door slamming. Cameron got erased from the company directory with the quiet efficiency of someone deleting a spam email. The Meridian contract was salvaged, barely. It took 6 weeks, $340,000 in remediation costs, and what our legal department diplomatically described as extensive relationship repair. Patricia, the Meridian project manager, was gracious enough to joke that she'd never seen such an expensive Zen garden, and professional enough to give us a second chance after reviewing my original project documentation. Victoria was reassigned to strategic planning, which is corporate speak for think about what you did wrong while we figure out what to do with you. Her office was converted into a storage room for extra office supplies, which felt like the kind of poetic justice that usually only happens in movies. I was promoted to Director of Project Management, with a corner office, a substantial raise, and the authority to approve all vendor selections personally. The business cards arrived with my name embossed in gold lettering, which seemed appropriate for someone who had just turned disaster documentation into career advancement. 3 months later, I received a LinkedIn connection request from Cameron. His new title read Innovation Consultant, helping traditional industries embrace disruptive change. His profile photo showed him standing in front of what appeared to be a whiteboard covered in meaningless diagrams and buzzwords. I declined the connection request. The pink granite was eventually recycled into a meditation garden behind our building, complete with a small plaque that read, "Donated by the project management team, in memory of lessons learned." Employees started calling it the Cameron Memorial Garden, though never when executives were within earshot. Sometimes I walk past it during lunch breaks, watching the afternoon sunlight reflect off 680 tons of very expensive decorative stone. It serves as a reminder that in corporate America, the difference between innovation and incompetence is often just a matter of documentation. And somewhere in Vermont, there's a landscaping supplier who still tells the story of the biggest single order in company history, the day someone paid aerospace facility prices for decorative river rock, and never asked a single question about what they were actually buying. My assistant asked me once if I felt bad about what happened to Cameron. I considered the question while looking out my corner office window at the memorial garden, where the pink granite caught the light like scattered gems in the afternoon sun. I gave him exactly what he asked for, I said finally. The opportunity to innovate without interference from old-school thinking. She nodded and went back to scheduling my next client meeting. Because in the end, that's what this job is really about. Not the contracts or the budgets or the carefully managed vendor relationships. It's about understanding that sometimes the most profound act of professional development you can offer someone is the chance to learn exactly how much they don't know. The gravel taught him that lesson better than I ever could. If you enjoyed this story of corporate karma and decorative stone, remember that the subscribe button costs nothing but helps keep these tales of workplace justice flowing. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply letting incompetence document itself.